All right, it is time for a weekly wrap up of film goals check-in. I'm missing at least one connecting word in that sentence. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be the films that I watched in week 10 of 2024, and I've gotten back to my first quarter plan of watching monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy. So I did watch one of each of those last week. I'm super excited about that. I know it's been a break between videos. I did have a bit of a hiatus for a variety of reasons, and I didn't watch tons of films during that time, but I did see a couple, so I am going to do an additional video that'll be sort of the everything else / kitchen sink video, but this is back to sort of like regularly scheduled programming, and I'm really excited about that because this first quarter goal of watching movies that are monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy is something that I was really excited about at the beginning of the year. I still continue to be excited about, but I can start to see my energy like start to wander a little bit. I think part of that is because I had quite a hiatus, which I knew was going to happen in terms of film watching, because I was watching a lot of AWC, which is World of Warcraft Arena World Cup esports. So a lot of arena PvP action, and so which was, some of it was incredibly exciting, like my goodness, but it's very, there's a lot of it in a very short period of time. It's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 to 9 hours each day. So I knew I wasn't going to watch any movies on those weeks. Anyway, but the season 3 for Dragonflight is complete. So congrats to the winners and all the participants. It was very exciting. And the commentators, because they're awesome and make it so much fun to watch. Anyway, but back to movies, not esports. So I was, where was I going with any of that? So yeah, so now I'm back on track with my goals of focusing on monster movies, newly added world cinema to Canopy, and dance movies. And the reason, if you haven't seen any of these videos before, the reason I chose those 3 categories is because those are all categories of films that I love. And this year, my major goal is just to get back in the habit of watching film regularly. Last year, I watched very few films, so I just want to get back into the habit of watching films. So I want easy yeses. I want to look at a slew of films and be like, yes, I want to watch that. And so monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy are where it's at. So let's get to see what I watched. So the monster movie that I watched for this week was The Gorgon. So this is a 1964 Hammer horror film. So it's a UK film. It has Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. They're often, I don't know if they're in all of the Hammer horror films, but it feels like they're in all of the Hammer horror films. And it was, I had a lot of fun watching this, I will admit. I really, there's so many things stylistically about this type of film that I really enjoy. It kind of reminds me of Dark Shadows in terms of like how it looks, and that it's very sort of like theatrical in terms of like almost like seeing a play on a stage. Like the costuming is really heavy, and the sets, the places look like sets. Like everything is very, I don't know, like it's a period, right? So it's a period piece. I didn't even say what this movie is about. Okay, so we're in a small town, not even a town, small village in Europe somewhere, and there have been strange deaths, and people are just sort of not like just, Peter Cushing plays the coroner, and it just sort of mostly gets brushed under the carpet. Nobody asks any questions. It's unusual, but and very, quick to sum things up and move on. However, someone comes and wants to know what's actually going on, so it has a sort of disaster movie format, or wants to know the truth of things. Actually, that's used in a lot of horror movies too. Wants to know the truth of things, and they believe that perhaps what's going on is that there is a tie to, or the actual mythological creature of the Gorgon, which is, of course, the creature that Medusa was. So snakes in the hair and turns people to stone. So, but this new busybody that wants to know all of the things, well, it's weird because this one I was trying to figure out who the protagonist was when I was putting it on my spreadsheet because I notate the protagonist, and I was like, I'm not actually sure. It feels more like of an ensemble because there's the nosy person, there is Peter Cushing as the coroner. Christopher Lee plays like a friend of a busybody character, but they don't, they're not actually in it that much. I wasn't even sure it was Christopher Lee. But for me, so much about this is the tone and it's very gothic, right? So which is a combination of horror and romance. And there's not tons of romance, but there is an element of romance here and there, very sort of sweeping atmosphere and like moody places and dark nights and all that kind of stuff. So for me, all of that kind of stuff I super love, and I really enjoyed. But there were some things that are not the best, don't age very well, and this one wasn't too bad for it, but I do feel like there was some sexism. There's not many female characters. It definitely does not pass the Bechdel test. But the mood and the styling and the over the top, like it's not over the top, but it's just like everything. It just feels so, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like that dark shadows and that heavy, like everything feels heavy in terms of like the costuming and the settings, and like, someone takes out a key, it's like this big, like everything just feels very theatrical, like you're watching a play, and I love that so much. So I enjoyed this a fair amount. I haven't done these videos for a while, so I don't know. I don't think I give a star rating. I don't remember when I rated this. For me, it doesn't really matter the rating because I enjoyed it, and also it reminded me that, or put the thought in my head that Hammer horror might be a fun thing to focus on at a later date. I watched it on Tubi, I think, and I think that they have a fair amount, and I like watching older film, and I will have to say, like, when I look at this montage of image, I don't know how much of any of that actually happened. Like, in particular, I don't think that actually happened. I think it's just, there's also this one, which is a bit more literal, and I enjoyed it. And, Barbara Shelley, she was in it as well. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, Hammer films. So let me know, do you like Hammer horror? Have you watched any Hammer horror? There is a fair amount on Tubi. I feel like I should look at a list at Wikipedia because I don't know how much I've actually seen, but it feels like something that is so iconic and classic, especially in terms of horror, but it really, for me, felt more gothic. So, and which is awesome. More of that, please. Next up, before my dance movie of the week, I watched Cold Nights Hot Salsa. This was a documentary. It's a Canadian-American co-pro, and it follows a Montreal duo who are a dance team and partners, and their goal to go to the world champion. So it's this world championship journey. That's what it says under that. The World Championships of Salsa Dancing. This one I think I also watched on Tubi. I believe I also watched it on Tubi. And I'll see if I can find a video of the actual dancers or a trailer for the film, and I'll put it in the corner because that is definitely was the highlight of the film, seeing the salsa dancing. And I love dance films. And I think one of the continual challenges are concerns that I've mentioned with so many of the ones that I've watched so far is that they didn't always talk about the relationship to music and dance, and I feel like this one really did, and maybe that's because it's a documentary. It really, there was more connection of dance and music, and I like that. There was a fair amount of rehearsals at classes with different instructors, and then always the goal, the idea, the want, the desire to have something a little bit more, that it wasn't just that they were always looking for something a little bit more to add, and that a lot of the people who went really far in the competitions often had that something extra. Now, one of the things that I did, now this is from I think 2015, so that's actually a fair amount of time now, especially in the world of like competitive sports. A lot of things happen quickly, and one of the challenges I did have with this one is sometimes I wasn't quite sure. Like, to be honest, I was like, what was their goal? Like, was it to get into the World Championships? I know it was about the World Championships, but was it to get into? Was it to place? Was it to be top 10? Was it to be number 1? And I actually can't answer that question, which is not great. But I also know for me, sometimes when I'm watching a documentary, I have a bit more of a critical eye in terms of, I actually really want information because it is a documentary. So I want to learn something. I want the parameters of whatever's going on to be super clear. And there were moments in this that I didn't feel like I understood, that. Like there was one moment where they talked about salsa dancing and how it's pretty freeform, like that there aren't many rules in comparative to other Latin ballroom styles. I believe salsa is a ballroom style. Is it? I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on that. Because it's the tango, the cha-cha, the jive, the paso doble, and the rumba. So maybe it's not a ballroom style. Maybe it's its own style. But I feel like I would like to know, I feel like after watching a documentary, I feel that I should be more firm in understanding what it was talking about. Now, this is a documentary and it is a personal journey of the two people on their goal to get to or win or place at the World Championships. So it is a little bit, it's about them as people and their journey in the competition. But sometimes I want to know, especially when it's framed around a competition, I want to know the parameters, because they talked about how it was pretty freeform. But then again, the judging got down to like decimal points. So what are they judging on? And like at one point they said something like, oh yeah, they judge on the 5 different things of the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the 5 different what? The 5, what are they? What are they? Can we get a chart? Can we get like a visual of what the 5 things are and how the math works? I always want to know how the math works. I know many people don't care, but that's where my brain goes. But this was really more about them and their journey and getting to see the performances and then the styles and the different competitions and those kinds of things. So I did enjoy it, but there were specific things I would like to see more of. And I do think one of the challenges about framing a documentary about a championship or a competition in any way, shape, or form is that you don't know how it's going to turn out. And so that's, I think, sometimes, and then we had a huge slew of documentaries following competitions. I think after Spellbound, that was the one that really, and that was a great movie, not the Hitchcock one, which was, I don't know if I've seen it. I imagine it's great because it's Hitchcock, but I don't know if I've seen the Hitchcock Spellbound, but there's a documentary, Spellbound, I think it's from 2010 or earlier, and it followed a competition, and after that we got tons of documentaries that use it, because you have a preset format. So, but this one I just wanted a little more about the specifics of the dance. There was a fair amount of dance. There was lots of rehearsals, lots of competitions, lots of performances, but it was a little like, it wasn't as flashy, like in terms of like it's someone, you could tell it's someone filming sitting in the, the audience or sitting off to the side. Like it felt a little less polished in that sense. But sometimes that's the vibe that you're going to get with documentaries. You're going to see a little behind the scenes. You're going to know that you're sort of like in the room as opposed to being like all like talking head presentational, although a lot of it is talking heads because it's a documentary, but there was a fair amount of dance. So I'm really glad that I picked it. I'm really glad that I'm continuing to watch dance movies. It was really awesome to see that it's a Montreal couple. So that was nice as well to get some CanCon in there. It's a Canada US co-pro, but I haven't gotten a lot of Canadian films or even Canadian co-pros in this year, so I'm really glad to do that because Canadian film does mean a lot to me, being Canadian. So so that's also a category for future reference. Sometimes it does require a little more work in terms of confirming or finding out if it's Canadian and stuff like that, and certainly not a lot of Canadian films are thrown to the forefront of things. That is a challenge, but Anyway, so that's something to think about for the future. Now, the last film that I'm going to talk about is my newly added World Cinema to Canopy title. And this, my goodness, I I did not know what I was getting into. And while I was watching it, I mostly had jaw was on the floor trying to comprehend what I was watching. So now that film is, and I couldn't find a great poster, but that film is Possession. This is from 1981. It is in English. It's the first one that I've watched from this category that's in English. It's a France and West Germany co-production. That's how old it is. When East and West Germany were separate countries. So it's from 1981, and it is, what's the other posters? Oh, this one really gives sort of the vibe of it. And then I think this is one of the ones that's used very often. But I feel like the challenge is, I'm going to leave it with this one. The challenge is it's really sort of, in some ways, in a very literal sense, it's about a marriage that's starting to fall apart. And we have, and the poll to me was actually, you can't really tell, the guy in it is Sam Neill, like Jurassic Park, Sam Neill, and in 1981. So he's like, I think, I don't know, 20, maybe 20, early mid-20s. And the woman in it is Isabel Adjani, and they were both amazing. So as I said, literally, like if you're going to take this literally, it kind of is about a marriage falling apart, but that is the surface, and it's not at all about what's going on the surface. It is all under the surface. The tone in this one is so unnerving right from the get-go. It's like you're just going, what is going on? There is so much tension. Who are these people to each other? Why is that person doing that? Why are they acting that way? And then it just gets more and more ramped up and odd throughout the film, to the point where it is very bizarre. And this is a combination of art house and horror. Like this, and which is, I think, is two sort of niche audiences. Not even niche. Art house is a niche audience. Horror has a big audience, but I don't think there's a lot of people that like both. But I do. But it's so unnerving, and it can get very grotesque, and there was body horror, and there was unnerving things, and there was like just everyone's body language in the tension. Like, it was so strange. And there was one, mostly I would feel like it somewhat sembles, like it's odd, but maybe reality. But there's one character that I'm like, I don't think that, like, someone acting in that way, it's not one of the two protagonists, but someone acting in that way, now we're going into like something else. Like, so like it worked for that character, I think, but it was just like, that's just too unusual. Like, that sort of broke the facade, like, just a smidge, how unusual they were behaving. But how these two behaved with each other or separately was incredibly unnerving, but for some and not realistic often, but for some reason it didn't break reality. And there was one character that I'm like, okay, now we're not in reality, but I don't think we're supposed to be, and it does. And so I don't know, this was body horror, chaos, bizarre, uncomfortable, but I will say the commitment of the actors was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Like, their level of how much they threw into this was amazing. So yeah, it's not going to be for everyone. I don't even know if it was for me. I mostly watched it going like, And it's definitely, it does have body horror, so if that's something, that's a no, and I understand it can be a no. And I don't know what it's rated. I am sure, I imagine it is rated R and fair play. Not for like all of the moments, but there's some stuff that you're like, no, no, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to know what's going on, but wow. So very, very strange, but like really wild, really out there, really was saying something. Do I know what it was saying? Not sure. It did have that sort of feeling of the need of catharsis kind of thing, like this sort of unrelenting drive to do something inexplicable, which is unnerving. And it held that tension throughout like the entire thing. And I think it was 2 hours. And I haven't been watching films that are that long for this challenge, but this one just really caught my eye. And I've been watching a lot of action movies, and so I thought this one looked a little different, and I wasn't sure if it was horror. I would say it's a bit more like thriller, to be honest, but you could easily classify it as horror, but it's also without question art house. Like, it is just strange, and it's saying something, but what? I don't know if that's not necessarily something that makes art house. I would say what makes art house is that it's more about the tone, or the texture, and like the vibe a bit more than the plot. You could write it down in 3 lines, but it's like, that's not what was going on. Like, that was that's the frame, but what was actually happening was all under the surface, and it was all unnerving, and it was all uncomfortable, and it was a lot to handle. I don't remember what I rated. I don't even know how you can rate something like that, because it's so completely different from so many other things. But it was extraordinary. And so, it was really well done, with the exception of that one actor that did go a very, very, very over the top performance, and it was just amped up just a little too much. I can't remember the character's name, and I didn't take it down. So, but I don't think it's, I don't know. I don't even know. So anyway, so those were the 3 films that I watched for getting back to sort of like my regular pace on things. I think it was actually a pretty good set. The Gorgon, Cold Nights, Hot Salsa, and Possession from 1981. Lots of different time period. Oh yeah, the 60s, 80s, and then, in the last 10 years. Documentary. I got a documentary in there. Art house and the Hammer horror. I guess for me, that stylistic element for both the Gorgon and Possession are things that I really, really enjoy. It's not something you necessarily know going into a film, or even from seeing a trailer. Like, you could tell the art direction and the costuming is cool, but you don't know the tone of something, because the tone of a trailer is like its own thing. So yeah. So anyway, so let me know what you've been watching recently. Have you seen any of these films? Do you like Hammer horror films? Have you seen Possession? My goodness, it was also so weird to see Sam Neill so young. Oh my gosh, like I could sometimes barely see him in there, you know what I mean? Because I've seen him in so many things over so many years, and this is like a good, I guess 10 to 15 years before Jurassic Park, and I've seen him on other stuff too, but I know that that's what a lot of people know him from. I often forget that he's in that. I don't know why. But yeah, let me know your favorite Sam Neill film, and if you have one, because I'm very curious about that, because I feel like most people know him from Jurassic Park, but and yeah, so anyway, so that is it. I will do, as I said, another video about the sort of like everything else that I've watched in this sort of time period where I haven't been doing videos, because I did get to see a couple of movies here and there, but now I'm back to my regular schedule, and I'm really, really loving it. I can feel I'm getting close to the end of the quarter, and I'm getting curious about what other categories I could focus on, but I definitely want to get a few more in before we get there. So there you go. Those are the films that I have watched recently, and I will be back soon with another video. Thank you so much for watching.